The South China Sea is a powder keg, contested reefs, shadowing ships, warnings blared over radio. But in August 2025, another sound cut through the tension. The thunder of Allied boots hitting the sand. From August 15th to 29th, more than 3,600 Australian and Filipino troops staged Exercise Alon 2025, the largest joint drill in their history. It wasn't just training, it was a message, one aimed directly at Beijing's growing footprint across the region. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a briefing from Naval Brief. The exercise spanned both land and sea. Amphibious ships carried Marines toward Philippine beaches, while fighter jets roared overhead and warships prowled the coastline. It was the kind of combined arms spectacle designed not just to sharpen skills, but to show solidarity. The Filipino word for wave captured the intent, a wave of cooperation meant to crash against coercion in the Indo-Pacific. For Manila, the stakes could not be higher. Philippine vessels have faced daily harassment near contested shoals, shadowed, rammed, blocked, and hit with water cannons. In this climate, training with Australia wasn't symbolic. It was survival practice. Troops rehearsed how to land reinforcements on contested islands, how to push back against hostile patrols, and how to sustain supply lines under constant pressure. Australia came with serious hardware. Amphibious assault ship HMS Canberra led the way, its flight deck humming with helicopters and drones. Offshore, the frigate HMS Anzac and supply ship HMS Stalwart provided escort and logistics. For the Philippines, the exercise mobilized Marine battalions, Coast Guard cutters, and shore-based artillery, a layered defense network for island protection. Together, they formed a miniature task force, a template for what coordination in a real flashpoint might look like. Observers from the United States, Japan, and South Korea watched closely. Each of these allies has skin in the game. The South China Sea isn't just about reefs or rocks, it's about sea lanes. Roughly $3 trillion of trade flows through annually. Any conflict there would send economic shockwaves around the world. China, for its part, denounced the drills. Beijing's foreign ministry branded Alon 2025 a provocation, accusing Canberra and Manila of provoking the region. But on the ground, or rather on the beach, the reality was stark. The Philippines is no longer standing alone. What made Alon 2025 especially significant wasn't just its size, but its scenarios. One segment simulated the retaking of an island seized by hostile forces. Troops stormed ashore under the cover of naval gunfire and helicopter-borne assault. Another phase tested maritime interdiction, boarding suspect vessels, securing cargo, and detaining mock enemy crews. These were not abstract drills. They mirrored real challenges Manila faces in the South China Sea, from gray zone tactics to outright military confrontation. The exercise also carried political weight. Australian defense officials were blunt. If the Philippines comes under pressure, Canberra won't sit on the sidelines. It was a statement underscored by every landing craft that hit the beach, every helicopter that kicked up sand as it set Marines on shore. For the Philippines, this was also about confidence. For years, its military has been outgunned, outnumbered, and routinely humiliated at sea. Seeing Allied hardware and troops working seamlessly with Filipino forces sent a different message. The Philippines is not without friends, and its defense doesn't rest on its shoulders alone. Local response was telling. Crowds gathered near drill sites, watching excitedly as convoys rolled through coastal towns. For ordinary Filipinos, the sight of foreign troops training shoulder to shoulder with their own was both unusual and reassuring. In the Philippines' long history of conflict and colonization, alliances have often been fraught. But Alon 2025 looked and felt different. Not an occupation, but a partnership. Strategically, the timing mattered. Just weeks before the drills, a collision between Chinese vessels near Scarborough Shoal had dominated headlines, exposing Beijing's own vulnerabilities. That incident highlighted the risks of overreach, while Alon 2025 showcased the power of cooperation. Two very different images of maritime power, one chaotic, the other coordinated. Australian commanders highlighted another point: logistics. Sustaining a force across the Indo-Pacific isn't easy. The drills rehearsed how to keep troops supplied in the middle of contested waters, moving ammunition, fuel, and rations under simulated threat. If war ever broke out, resupply could decide whether an outpost holds or falls. Alon 2025 turned that theory into practice. But exercises are also about politics as much as tactics. For Canberra, this was about signaling that its commitment to regional allies isn't just words. For Manila, it was about proving to its people and to China that it is not isolated. And for the region at large, it was a reminder that alliances can shift the balance, even against a stronger adversary. The numbers were modest compared to China's standing army or navy, but symbolism matters. 3,600 troops, a handful of ships, and weeks of drills made headlines far beyond the Philippines. Because what was really on display wasn't firepower, but coordination, the ability to operate as one. Of course, China wasn't idle during the exercise. Reports surfaced of Chinese surveillance aircraft circling at high altitude, tracking movements. Fishing vessels suspected of doubling as militia loitered near drill zones. These shadows underscored the reality that the South China Sea is never a neutral stage. Every action is observed, every maneuver cataloged, every exercise interpreted as part of a larger game. Some analysts argued that Alon 2025 was more than defense. It was deterrence. By practicing the retaking of an island, allies were showing that any hostile seizure might be temporary. By rehearsing maritime interdictions, they were demonstrating the tools to enforce international law. And by putting boots on Philippine sand alongside warships offshore, they were broadcasting a simple truth: aggression would meet resistance. At the same time, questions lingered. Would Australia really intervene if conflict broke out? Would the United States back them up militarily or only politically? How far would Japan and South Korea go beyond watching? These uncertainties are precisely what Beijing counts on. Alon 2025 didn't erase those doubts, but it did reduce them. The final day of drills was as much theater as training. Amphibious vehicles surged ashore in synchronized waves. Soldiers unfurled flags on the beach. Helicopters hovered low, kicking up walls of sand. The images flashed across international news and across Chinese state media, where they were condemned as acts of confrontation. But regardless of the spin, the optics were unmistakable. Manila has partners, and those partners are willing to show up in force. Looking ahead, both governments pledged to make Alon an annual event. First launched in 2023, the exercise is now building momentum, with each round expected to grow larger, sharper, and more complex. A recurring statement of readiness that reminds the region the Philippines isn't alone. And that is the essence of deterrence. Not just weapons, but will. Not just numbers, but unity. For Beijing, Alon 2025 was a warning. For Manila, it was reassurance. For the region, it was a glimpse of how collective defense might hold the line in contested waters. The South China Sea remains one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints. But for 2 weeks in August, its shores carried another story. One of cooperation, resolve, and the unshakable message that allies will stand together. This is Naval Brief, your briefing room for sea power and defense analysis. If you're all hands on deck for real naval operations, maritime conflict, and global defense, subscribe and stay mission ready for the next briefing.